Hello friends, welcome back. Welcome to the series. We are discussing Domain 1, Security and Risk Management. And the topic of discussion today is personal security. So let's go to the drawing board and see how we can understand this topic in a nice way, in a better way, so that it sticks to your memory. Coming to my drawing desk here, if you see, I have drawn some inspiration from few movies. We have Matrix, Three Idiots, and a movie Kante. I don't know if you have seen this movie. It's a Bollywood movie based on it's an adaptation of a Hollywood movie basically. But I found this interesting when I was reading this topic of vendor management and the risk. You know, it incorporates if we have too many vendors and too many contractors and we don't do proper risk assessment for that, then some sort of disaster can come and we can relate that disaster what happened in this movie. Anyway, coming here, when we discussed personal security, what we should know is the overall flow of the people management. At a very start, what we should know that people are the weakest link in security chain. So all expensive technology and fancy processes will be useless if we have stupid people in place, like if we have people who are not motivated to uphold security, right? Then everything will fall, everything will be of no use, right? So that's why we say that people are the weakest link in security chain, whereas people are key security asset if trained and motivated. If they have proper motivation and they have proper training, then they can actually bring better security than buying expensive security products and I will say investing time and money on different fancy processes. So basically they are the two sides of same coin, and we should know this, we should keep this in mind when we are deploying policies or crafting policies for personal security, that there should be proper motivation for people to follow security, and there should be some fun and entertainment associated with all the training. It should not be felt boring. So those kind of things are very important when we discuss this concept. Now, a very high level idea of the topic. So when we say how to bring a proper security posture with the people around, it all starts with the hiring process, right? So the very first step is to create job description and responsibilities, and then we discuss candidate screening and hiring processes, and then onboarding process, which is basically employment agreement and agreement over the policies. Then a very important aspect is employee oversight, right? So let me number it down here so that it's easy to refer. So this is step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, employee oversight, and then offboarding, transfer and termination process, step number 5, right? Now, what is this step 1, which says job description and responsibilities, right? So in any company, regardless if you are going for a hiring or not, you should have a job role or job description defined for all the people who are working in the company. If you don't have this definition, what's going to happen? Then people don't have their own defined set of description. You may overstaff, or you may understaff, or you may have one person doing multiple job and he is overburdened. This brings a lot of challenges, and this brings the security challenges as well. So when you talk of confidentiality, integrity and availability, and you don't define a job description, you don't define the position description, you don't classify your job rankings in the company, then it may happen that a single person can be a single point of failure for one of the most critical function of your company, right? So when it comes to hiring, what you do, you first the very first thing you do is you create a job description or position description. You do job classification, you do a screening, onboarding, and training. All those things is involved in hiring. So what is job role? Job role is basically a high level uh, description, and it's an indication of the rank or level of privilege a person is going to have. It's very easily identifiable. Like if someone says that his job role is the chief finance officer of the company, so you know that he is the overall boss of all the financial aspects of the company, right? If a person is a chief security officer, so that's his role, right? So it gives a level of the rank, an indication of the rank or the level of privilege that person is going to hold in the company, right? Now this job role is also aligned with the band structure a company follows or the tier structure a company follows. So the highest tier could be the tier 7, where all CEO and big business stakeholders are there. Then you have band 6, band 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, this kind of thing. So if someone says, let's say take a example of a company IBM. If someone says he's a band 6, or then we can get an idea that he's a senior executive. Or if someone says that I'm a senior system engineer, so he could be a band 6 or band 7 person. So that kind of mapping happens where the job role is discussed. When it comes to job description, a role may have different job descriptions and different profiles within it. So the job description is basically the assigned responsibility and task associated with a job role. So you can create a job role first, and then you can create job description. So it follows in the hierarchy. Now, in job description, you are not having a very much granular detail of what a person is gonna do, right? Then comes the concept of job responsibilities. So job responsibility basically guides the assignment of access rights, permission, and privilege a person is gonna have. So the job description could be a senior system engineer, but the senior system engineer may be of many types. Maybe a senior system engineer managing Linux boxes or some network devices or some database or some critical application, right? Now the job responsibility will be a part of the job description basically, which will say that person X is responsible for managing database system, right? So that's the job responsibility. So this is very important. Job description and responsibility should be documented, not only for the hiring stage of a company, but at every stage this has to be reviewed. There should be a quarterly or half yearly review of the job descriptions in the company, and what peoples are related with which job description, right? Now this, if this review happens, then further review can happen that if they are doing the responsibilities as per the description or not, and if the assigned permission and privileges to the system for the users is following the principle of least privilege or not. So those kind of assessment can be done, but the prerequisite is that we should have defined role description and responsibility in the company. Now, candidate screening and hiring for any new role in your company is based on the sensitivity and classification defined by job description, right? So the job description basically is an indication, because in what we saw that job description assigns some sort of responsibility and task. So when you are assigned some sort of responsibility and task, basically you are in the end you are going to have access to some of the information in the company, and based on those based on your role, you are going to take some action on those information, right? So this will be governed by the information classification and asset classification as well, that your description is gonna interact with a C1 classified data or C2 classified data, those kind of thing. So job description should be based on the sensitivity and classification defined by job description, right? So if we're gonna hire someone, then the hiring process should have all this consideration in place. Now, before we hire, we should do some background check, social media footprints, how the person is, what are his views, those kind of thing. Look out for disqualification issue. Now, the disqualification issues are something which is not subjective. Basically, we document this as part of our hiring process, that if a person is of some specific views, we don't hire those kind of people, right? So those disqualification has to be documented and agreed, and as part of the company documentation. Because if we disqualify someone based on some reason which is not legally defensible, then it's again a different problem for the company, right? So we have seen in some of the countries who are very very politically unstable, there people go with their own biases, and some of the people in the company take some action, and it brings a bad name to the company, and the company may go for a legal case if we take some decision, we discriminate someone based on some subjective biases, which is not part of the company's documented policy. So this is very important to consider. Now, interviewing should be a process which should be standardized. So we should have a standardized interview process, and it should be legally defensible when we make some interview decision. This goes in hand with what I talked about disqualification things. That when we are interviewing someone, if we have a standard set pattern for interview, it helps it helps for both candidate and the company, and it gives a ground to resolve the conflict which may arise from interviewing process, right? So all the decision which we take as part of someone to hire or someone not to hire, it should be legally defensible. This is one of the most critical part of the whole screening and hiring purpose. Now, and in the third state, when what we have done so far is that we created job description and responsibilities to hire someone. We did a screening and hiring, right? And then we go for onboarding, which is basically employment agreement and policy discussion, in addition to the salary negotiation and other things, right? One more point, I don't know if I have stressed this before or not. So these two processes, like job description and responsibility and screening hiring, it's not only for the new employee joining the company, but if a person is moved from one department to another department, or if a person is promoted, then also these things has to be checked and taken care of. Otherwise, what happens, there is something called privilege creep which happens. Privilege creep is like a person who was a junior administrator, he was having access to, let's say, 100 different devices. Now he is a senior admin. As a senior admin, you don't need root access of so many devices. You just need root access of some of the critical devices, and having a root access of those 100 devices is not part of your day in day out work. There is a different person who is having this kind of access. Now, if the process is not too much optimized, what is going to happen, as you move up or you move laterally, you go to some different department, then you carry those privilege with you. So at one time you were a database administrator and you have some super user account, SA account details, with you. Your user ID was having, you know, a privilege to create table or to delete entries from the table. But you moved now as a senior consultant in a sales department. Now, when you move to the sales department, your role has to be reviewed again, as if you are joining the company again, right? not in the exact 100% same process, but a process should exist to check into the your existing job description and responsibilities, which is here basically, and what is your responsibility and description going forward, right? So this kind of check has to be there. If it is not, then privilege creep and other problems can arise, right? Now, when it comes to onboarding, what happens? Like onboarding process start with identity and access management system, which is basically to grant computer and user account to the person, and where this decision will come from. The decision will come from the job description, basically, and job responsibilities. Two things will drive this step. At this step, the identity and access management should enforce the principle of least privilege. And what is principle of least privilege? The principle of least privilege is it actually says that the person should have the minimum amount of access necessary for the job. No, nothing less, nothing more. In an ideal case, he or she should have minimum amount of access to carry out the job he is assigned for. So that's principle of least privilege. Identity and access management is nowadays considered as the first layer of defense. Now we are having so many bring your own device thing coming up in, and people are working from remote. So the classical definition of network zones and boundaries are getting evolved now. So the greater focus nowadays is on identity and access management system, where at the very start we define the privileges and rights to a user in a way that it is segmented. It is segmented logically at the very first gate, itself. So that's about IAM. In onboarding process, you discuss employment agreement, acceptable use of policy. Employment agreement, we all know that it's a piece of paper where you have written all your HR clauses, your leaves, your salary, what are your job responsibilities, when if you are going to leave the company, what process you should follow. Acceptable use of policy is about all the infrastructure company is going to provide. So what is the acceptable use of personal and corporate usage of the infrastructure which is there? So that's acceptable use of policy. NDA is used to protect confidential information within the organization. We discussed intellectual property, therein we discussed trade secret. So to safeguard trade secret, a company enforces some sort of encryption or some sort of secrecy around it, but also gets a sign off on NDA that if a person is caught exposing the trade secret or confidential information, what is the penalty that can happen? So it acts as a deterrent for a person to go into those kind of thing, right? So employment agreement, acceptable use of policy, and NDA, these are all part of onboarding process. In exam, the question is not going to come like what steps are there in the onboarding or process, or hiring process or a screening process. This is just a framework we should have in mind. The question could be some of different nature, that you wanna achieve the principle of least privilege at what stage in the overall hiring process we should think of enforcing the principle of least privilege, right? So in terms of policy, when we define a job description and job responsibility, there itself we should have this idea of principle of least privilege, what system he should have privilege on. And when we are enforcing this as a technical control, then when we are creating the user IDs in identity and access management, there we will look into the job descriptions, roles, responsibilities, and then we will decide that what access, what least privilege access the user is going to have. So that kind of question based on this understanding can come in the exam. We should be careful about that. Now, once a person is hired to do some job, what happens next is employee oversight. What is employee oversight? Employee oversight is basically a regular review and audit of the job description. As I said before, that creating a job description is not only for the hiring of new employees, but it's about having a definition for each kind of role a company actually have in its function, right? So if a job description is there, we should have a regular review and audit of the job description, uh, to just check that if the job description is really required to carry out or not, and what people in the company are associated with some job description, right? There is a process of mandatory vacation which is used as a peer review process. So peer review uses, when we go for mandatory vacation, a person uses the same account of the person who is at vacation, and this is used to detect abuse, fraud, and negligence. So this is one of the method where we can check the health of job description on ground, right? You can do mandatory vacation, right? Other things related with this is separation of duties, job rotation, and cross training, which is there in a different chapter. I'm going to discuss those things, but these all are used to detect some sort of fraud that can happen in a company, right? There is a famous term called collusion, right? So collusion, what is collusion? Collusion is basically, it's some type of crime where different people are involved, right? So several people work together to make a crime, right? So that's collusion. Now, how we detect collusion? The detection mechanism is, we can ask employees to go on mandatory vacation. We can have separation of duty, job rotation, and cross training. So these things, if we have separation of duty, job rotation, and cross training, this will give enough detection for collusion to happen in a company, right? So if we do all these exercise, we will detect very early the signs of collusion, right? So this is also important from exams point of view to understand what is collusion and how we can stop it, basically. If when it comes to stopping collusion, it's better to have separation of duties in company, because if one person is doing too many tasks at the same time, there are greater chances that he will indulge uh, in collusion, right? Because the number of people required to do the crime will be less, right? But if you have too many separation of duties, then there will be too much of interaction required by too many people, so that reduces the chance of collusion happening in a company, right? So if you do job rotation as well, that will serve as some sort of deterrent for collusion to happen. Yeah, so those things I will discuss in a separate video, um, where I will discuss collusion, uh, and how we can stop it, right? But at this stage in this video, we should just know that collusion is one of the most important thing a company should keep in mind when they are discussing employee oversight. Now, user behavior analytics and user and entity behavior analysis, these are the concept of analyzing the behavior of user, subject, visitor, customer, etc. for some specific goals, right? Um, so these are highly sophisticated technology, where we see that how a user behaves in a day in day out basis, or in some situation, if this behavior changes, this is a sign of some sort of problem happening in the company, right? Now, in the very last stage, when there is a need of offboarding, transfer, and termination process, then this has to be dealt very diligently, because it's not always a very happy situation when someone is fired from a company. So the key thing which we should have in mind when we do this is that we should not display any sign of a decision before the employee is actually told about the decision, right? So this is one thing which has to be taken care of. When it comes to the identity and access management system, we first disable the account and then we delete after some time. This could be because of checking some audit logs, or some of the a person who is not satisfied with the company is having some grudge. He can have some sort of program or logic bomb planted, and that may cause some disruption or some virus and worm activity in the company. So to detect that action log, we should have the user account in a disabled state for some reasonable time, and then after that we can delete the account. Exit interview is if a person is voluntarily leaving the company, or it's just a transfer from one department to another department. It's better to have exit interview just to understand the company process as well, and if there is any scope of improvement in the operations and security of the position. So these are the things which are basically the life cycle of an employee in a company. Now, when it comes to vendors, consultants, and contractors, we should have a strict agreements and controls with them. We the with the involvement of different vendors, we have increased vulnerability and attack surface because of the multi-party risk. Then we should have a risk management governing body to oversee the multi-party project, right? Companies deploy this vendor management system wherein they have a piece of software where they list all the vendors, their contracts, their NDA sign off and other things in one place, so that vendors can be tracked. When we outsource some of our business to another company, then it becomes even more critical to look after the SLAs and contract with that vendor, right? And then comes the concept of SLAs, service level agreements, where we list down the exceptions and what are the penalties associated with those exceptions. Now that's all for this video. There is one more point is about compliance and policy requirement basically. So this is enforced by the CISO and CSS or CSO of the company, and it's an administrative control. We will look into the different type of control types like administrative, physical, and technical in upcoming videos. But the compliance exercise is basically an administrative control. We should have this in our mind for the exams. What else? Is there anything else I have missed in this topic? I think most of the things are already addressed. There is one privacy angle as well we should have in our mind when we discuss employee onboarding. We should extensively discuss the privacy policy in the company, that what is considered as personally identifiable information. So basically, whenever we are going for information gathering, it's not only for the employment purpose, but if in the course of business as well, if we are collecting information from customers, so it mandates addressing the privacy issue, because every country in a sense have some sort of privacy requirement or regulations. We should always look into that part. If we don't, then we become legally liable to too many things, and it may cost heavily for a company, right? That's all for this video. I think with this presentation I was able to explain what are the stages of an employee management in a company, and what are the security areas we should be looking after. The key security areas are the principle of least privilege. We should always keep in mind while we do onboard. We should have a regular review of job description and roles and responsibilities in a company, vis-a-vis what people are actually falling into those domain. Then we should be having an employee oversight process in the company, so that the issue of collusion do not take place. And in case of vendor and contractors, we should have a vendor management system in our company, and that should look after all the vendors, contracts, SLAs. Yeah, that's all. I hope this video is useful for you. And in the next part of this series, we are gonna discuss risk terminologies, and then we will be doing business continuity planning, because business continuity planning needs some information on the terminologies we use in risk assessment. With that note, let's end this video. Hope to see you in the next video. If you like this video, put the thumbs up, and you can subscribe to my channel for similar content. And in this series, I will be covering the whole CISSP syllabus. So if you are following this series from episode 1 till now, you will see some sort of logical sequence. Best of luck for your exams, and let's meet you in the next video.